Hey there, welcome to Pickled Parables. This podcast is presented by Parable Ministries as a Bible teaching resource. Thank you for joining us. Pickled Parables is a podcast about taking in and living out the Bible. Here we will study, contemplate, and testify to the Bible's incredible teachings and how it leads us to live better lives. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at parable_ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. We hope today's message finds you well.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Pickled Parables. We're back with another of our pickled portraits. And this week, I am joined by RJ Olmstead. RJ, how are you?
I'm good, Hunter. How are you?
Good. Did I get the last name right? I probably should check this
No,
before I
that's
hit
spot
record.
on. Olmstead.
Yeah, sweet. Awesome. So RJ is one of our teachers here at Parable. He's shared a number of times. Especially he joined Michael and Elijah Olander for a longer book study. I believe last year was y'all were working through. Yeah. I think it was James. Was it James?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so he's been a teacher with us here for a couple of years, and I'm excited for this portrait because other than the handful of interactions you and I have had via email and text and hey, here's my audio, let me know, I do not know much about you. And so RJ, give us your kind of your background, your upbringing, where you came from, who you came from, all that stuff. What's your story?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Arizona. I think I've talked about that in a couple of different episodes, but born to my mom, who was born out in Oregon, raised down in Tucson. My dad was born in California, and he traveled around all the time as a kid. His side of the family is actually LDS, and then my mom's side of the family is technically Baptist. They've always been kind of non-denominational, but Christian on her side. And yeah, I mean, growing up, it was me, my two siblings, and them, and we planted down in Mesa, or they planted down in Mesa right before I was born, and that's where I grew up. So it was a good time, and it was interesting growing up in the desert.
Yeah. Growing up in the desert. Is it like truly, I mean, Michael, every now and then Michael Rogers will call, and he's like, yeah, it's 125, and I'm going,
yes, it is.
There's colder, cooler, less seemingly forsaken places that you can settle. But
so here's my reverse question. What's your temperature right now? It's January 31st.
What is your temperature?
Our January temperature right now is I have a high of 66 and a low of 40.
So I'm gonna be honest with you. You caught me on a good day, because if you'd asked me this question yesterday, it would have been harrowing. But it's a high of 50, low of 39. But we're staring down. I'll just for full transparency, this time next week we're staring down a low of 25 with snow on the calendar. So
good.
Yes, point proven.
You know what the Arizona expression is?
Huh? You
know what the Arizona winter expression is?
I do not.
You don't have to shovel sunshine.
That's true. Hey, that's facts. I grew up in Montana, and so it was just
gosh.
Oh yeah, it's just.
So you want to talk about cold?
Yeah, it's icy. Wow. So in Arizona, I have a lot of questions about the dad side and LDS, but I'm gonna hold them just in case that plays out later. And so you were kind of brought up within the scope of you said Baptist fundamentalist Christianity. What was your experience in the church and growing up in that?
Yeah, my mom, growing up in Tucson, her family had a very communal church that I always forget the name of it. I feel bad. But they grew up very communal. My mom and her sister both went there pretty much their entire lives until they were adults. And when she moved up here, she was looking for a church, and she had found it's a church called Central Christian. And at the time, they were just one campus, and it kind of grew over time, and now they have like 6 or 7, I think. And I mean, they're huge, right? But that was from going to church as a kid till my sophomore year of college. That was my home church, like undisputedly. Wow. Right? And it was a mix of things, because I I wasn't great at sticking around in the church for probably 3-4 years there. It was one of those things of like, I'm the kid, I'll show up and I'll help you with tech, but I'm not going to service, don't ask me.
Right.
But it was good. And it was, growing up, especially with my dad's side of the family, my dad's dad and mom lived with us for a number of years. And growing up with him in the house, there was never any kind of conflict, right? And so for the longest time, it was that stereotypical kid thing of like, oh, there's no difference, right? We're basically the same thing. It's all the same. And it didn't start hitting me the differences until I got into high school. Because in high school, you start seeing, LDS kids, they're starting to worry about missions trips, and do they have that priesthood or this priesthood? And, I've got my granddad welcoming in missionaries from out of state, and they're hosting them for dinner, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so there was a big difference there, but outside of that, growing up, I never really knew. The bigger thing that played out was it was really important to my dad of when they get old enough, they make the decision. Right? Mom was really emphatic of, I want them to come to church with me when I go. And Dad said, that's fine, but when they get old enough, they're allowed to pick. And so that's what we all did. I have 2 older siblings, my brother and my sister. And both of them kind of stayed committed. And then when they started getting busier and busier, they dropped it. It wasn't a priority. And as I said, I was pretty good about, I'll go help. I'm part of the AV team for the kids ministry. Yeah. It's good. And then, internally, I'm 1,000 miles away, but we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah. Was that I think that it's encouraging to hear, you had your grandparents living with you, and I think a lot of times, Jesse and I have been having a lot of conversations around LDS recently. And kind of he and I have been sharing some of our experiences, and one of the things that we've noticed is like he and I, we don't have that in our background, but we have a lot of friends that came from that or grew up around it, and there's a lot of almost severing of ties when there's differences in belief, especially around LDS sometimes. And so it's encouraging to hear that wasn't a part of, at least maybe not at the, I don't know, like was that ever something that came up? Was there ever like, hey, you've broken away from this, so we're going to sever ties?
In a serious way, no. I mean, my dad's side of the family, the whole side of the family is very involved, and they're still a part of it, and they practice pretty actively. But in terms of, like, my dad's immediate family, so my grandparents, and then he's got 2 sisters and a brother. Right? Yeah. All 3 of them were a little more involved than he was. My dad stopped really practicing, I think, when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And it just didn't become a priority for him. And so it was less of a priority for him, which meant that when he got married to my mom, it was less of a priority then. And then that all plays out, right?
Yeah.
But as for, like, his parents and my aunts and my uncles, it was never a problem, right? Family reunions were a little awkward. Of like, oh, what's your current ward doing? I'm like, my current what? I don't... But outside of that...
I'm level 35 in Hearthstone. Is that what you mean? No.
There you go. Exactly. I'm just like, I don't know what that word means, but me and my church are doing great. I don't.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it was one of those things of like and I didn't exclusively go to Central Christian. If we were traveling, we went other places, and there were a couple of times that my grandpa really wanted me to go with him that week because of something going on, and so we would. And I hated it because I actually put on nice clothes for that, but it was fine. And I mean, it was good, right? It was very fortunate that, especially my granddad being the head of that household, was very clear of like, as long as you're believing in Christ, I got nothing. Right.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for me, but also, listeners to hear that experience. Because I think, and, I think sometimes LDS gets a tough rap. Yeah. And in my opinion, sometimes it should, but it's also important to know those experiences where it's like, no, I mean, there was mutual understanding. There's acceptance of like, yeah, well, he believes in Jesus, so go in peace. And that's, I think in many ways that's sometimes the best way that can exist. So that's encouraging to hear. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you're you're going. It kind of seems like you're going to church. You're doing your thing,
Mm-hmm.
doing the AV team. How did you get involved with like media and tech and all that stuff?
Um, oh gosh. So my mom was a worship singer, and she
Okay.
did that. She was part of the weekend team for the big service, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
And so she was part of that team for a long time, like close to a decade, I'm pretty sure. And eventually,
Wow.
just it got too busy, too much, and they had to draw. My parents had to draw the line somewhere, and so they said, okay, well, let's have her, step back. And so she
Mm.
did, and then she ended up waiting a couple of years, and then things kind of calmed down a little more, and so she wanted to get back into it, but she didn't want to be a part of big service because it was still the same level of commitment. And
Mm.
so she went to the children's service for fourth through sixth grade, which is what I was just about to go into. And she says, hey, I know you guys do a live band for the kids. Do you guys need another singer? I was like, oh, yeah, we do. And so I would go with her early because she was rehearsing and doing all the stuff with the band. And, well, the only real place to sit at that point is to go sit in the back with the sound booth guys. And so I end up doing that. And I start
That's
asking
awesome.
questions and poking buttons. They're like, no, don't touch it. And then, uh, yeah, it just turned into, do you want to know how to do this? I said, yeah, I would love to help, sure. So I did that, and that led
That's awesome.
into I ended up working with the big service team doing remote camera work, and I was part of the sound booth in the major service once, and I very quickly realized how big that gap was, and I said, I'm good. I'll stick to the cameras, and it was good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really quick intro to all the media stuff, and then you know when it came around that I started struggling in faith and having questions and doubts and dealing with stuff, I
Hmm.
kept doing that, which I genuinely believe is one of the only things that kept me connected to a church, right?
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed doing the tech stuff. So it played out on a number of levels, but it worked out
Yeah.
really well. Yeah.
That's cool. Um, I I think one of the things that as you're talking about, there's only a handful of other ways in like our experience in this world where as a kid
Yeah.
you just get folded into learn like sound media and tech,
Yeah.
and you don't have to pay for the training, and it's like
Mm.
shameless plug for that aspect of church, I guess, right there. It's like,
High tech
here we
church
are.
does have a
Yeah.
place at the table for training your kids. There is a
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah. So at what age, this is one of those kind of nebulous questions, but I'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
Do you have an age at which you would say this is when I put my faith in Jesus Christ?
Yeah, no, so funnily enough, in terms of telling my testimony so many times, because
Yeah.
I work pretty closely with college kids. I'm still part of different things at Arizona Christian University, which is where I went and where I met Michael and Elijah Olander and all them. And I'm still an adjunct there when they request me. And, in talking to all of them, you get to share your story a lot because it's a Christian school. And so kids, well, how did you meet Jesus? It's like, okay, well, this is how I met Jesus.
Yeah.
And I always put the cutoff at 10, right? 10 is my marker because that's the age I got baptized at.
Okay.
Of like, yeah, I recognize there is, and I'm a kid, so limited recognition and availability. But, at that point, I was convinced enough. I was like, yeah, I want to get baptized. And so I did. And that played out really well for 6, 7 months. And then I started getting bullied at school, and then all this stuff started happening. And at that point, you're like, okay, well, crap, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word,
Yeah.
and you start questioning and start searching. And so I ended up going into like this 4 to 5 year period of like just downward spiraling.
Hmm.
And so, and in that I was dealing with mental health problems that I didn't know was in my family history. I was dealing with like an epidemic's not the right word. I don't know the right word. I'll think of
Yeah.
it
You're
later.
good.
I
Yeah.
I was dealing with all these different statutes of like my head is not in the right place, but I can't fix it, and I feel alone. And because
Hmm.
I wasn't aware of all the family stuff, I kind of just boxed it in. Which,
Yeah.
if you ever talk to anybody who's in any behavioral health field or psychiatric field, they go, "Don't do that." But I was doing that, and so I did that for 4 to 5 years. I ended up in like this. I always tell people it's a Western nihilism of like nothing really matters except me. Like I'll take
Yeah.
care of me,
Yeah.
and did that for till probably my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
Which coming out of baptism into that was an odd experience, and I started really questioning, was that real? Was it genuine? Did I really mean it? Did I really understand it? Now, in all this retrospect, it's like, yeah, no, I did, and I was just dumb, and I let everything else get to me because I was a kid, right, and I didn't know any better. And probably summer going into my freshman year of high school, I had my first camp. I met a guy who is still a very close friend of mine, but at that time kind of became this distant mentor about what Christian things were like, and I was still on the fence of like, yeah, but it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah.
And I ended up in a depression, ended up having, trigger warning for people. I ended up having a couple of suicide attempts, and after the second one, within about 15 minutes, that guy texted me. He goes, hey, we haven't talked in like a year and a half, but I've been praying for you lately. I'd love to meet up sometime. Which, going through that second attempt and then getting that text message, I immediately freak out. Because I'm like, why, how, what is happening? Right? And
Wow.
one of those providential timing things. And I agree. And I meet with him. I end up talking to him for probably about a year and a half. Pretty much every week. And we met afterwards. But like after that year and a half, I was kind of reconvinced and re-enveloped. And that was summer before my junior year of high school, so 16.
Wow.
Right? I mean,
Wow.
so from 10 to 16, bunch of turmoil, but yeah, I'd say 10 is my first convincing and 16 was my re-entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, thank you for sharing that. That's heavy stuff too. And I'm sorry that you dealing with mental health stuff is it's not for the weak. So, praise God that you found this person and these people that could, even if it seems random, like you brought up this idea of like it seems like God's providence, that text message in the middle of the night, it's wild how often can do so much. And so like and that's such a formative time. Yeah. That's a tough time to be facing that type thing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Happy to.
Do you think like, and you don't have to go into this because I'm not a therapist, and if I was, I probably would not be very good at it. But you talked about like, and obviously you got to keep your family stuff confidential, but you talked about like this pattern, this family stuff that you didn't know about, and I think this is crucial. And I think this is something that sometimes we don't, the church sometimes shies away from mental health.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way of just coming right out and saying it. Do you think that was part of why maybe you didn't know a lot of that stuff and that history, or?
No, I think right, because in frame of reference, I went to public school K through 12. Right, so that wasn't hidden from us, and in like our sex ed classes, they would talk about hormonal changes, and you might start dealing with stuff. Right. So it was on my radar of like, this is a thing that exists, but in reality of like my family history, there's a track record of like, there's insomnia in my family, there's depression in my family, there's anxiety in my family, right? There's a couple of distant cases of like more severe conditions in my family, which genetics always play a part in that, and it's one of those things of like, you think about that after you start figuring stuff out and you go, oh, yeah. So I'm not, it sounds contradictory. I'm not crazy. There's this component of my being that is tied up in this. All right. We can get into like fallen state and it's not natural and how do you treat it? How do you approach it biblically and all that different stuff. But that matters less in the moment when you're just sitting there like, what is this? And so, in dealing with that alone, was super hard, right? I mean, I didn't really open up to anybody. My parents didn't know that story until 4 years ago.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. 4 years ago. And breaking that to my dad, who also deals with stuff, right? That was the first time I ever made my dad cry. It was like, because he realized, he's like, oh, I've never talked about this with him. Right? Not before that point. We talked about it, when I moved out. And I had been an adult and I was dealing with stuff and I would come back and we would be open with each other about that stuff, but it never clicked for him because he was in the middle of dealing with it. But like, I should probably be, giving my kids a heads up of like, hey, this is a thing. Right. And you want to talk about one of those moments of like being a proud kid to your dad. I like the progression that you see in my family with pretty much everybody, but especially my dad, of like that was one of the best examples I had of like, oh, this is a guy who's dealing with this and like actually getting better and trying and moving forward in it. And you know, I would blame the church if that had ever been a problem with it.
Yeah.
But the reality is just that wasn't the case for me. And
Good.
so
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, and it worked out really well, and I hope that other people out there are getting the same experience. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I just wanted to clarify because I think sometimes, you know, I think these portrait episodes are some that are heard by maybe those who do not yet believe or do not believe, and I you know, sometimes it's good to clarify that, like, while that can happen, that's not the case every time.
Well, and it shouldn't be either.
Right.
Right. Like
Right.
being open of like that's not what's supposed to happen. Like,
Right. Yeah. It's weird because I've worked like mental health adjacent for going on 15 years, I feel like, and it, you know, it's real.
Yeah.
Like I just tell people, like, Christians that are kind of, I don't know. I was like, well, no, it's real. Trust me.
thing.
Like, not much makes a kid bug out like the things going on in their brain.
Yeah.
So,
It's just
but yeah, so you're 16, you know, you've rediscovered this faith. What, that's kind of are you like looking out, or you got the like existential dread of turning 18 and what happens after high school at that point?
no. I had a weird amount of confidence. Right.
Oh, cool.
It was. I always feel like it's one of the two. Like either you are completely in shambles trying to figure out what's going on, or you're just like overconfident about I'm gonna do this. And I ended up in that second camp I was doing a trade school at the time. It's the East Valley Institute of Technology. It's a trade school for a bunch of different stuff, and I was in a 3D animation and game design program because I wanted to go in and I want to be a concept artist for these big game studios. I still get to do art every now and then, but I got really into it for those 2 years because you get certified and you get all these credentials. And so going into my junior year, I went to a camp and signed up for my first mission trip. And it was just it was 2.5 weeks in Haiti with relief work, providing food and stuff. And it was in the in-between season of hurricane season, so like we were supposed to be safe, and obviously, you know, politically there's all kinds of stuff to talk about now, and it wasn't nearly as bad then, but there was still stuff happening. And so getting prepared for that, I started getting like this inclination of like I would want to do this like every summer. Like this would be something I would want to do every summer. Right? And so I sign up for a trip, and I go through that first year of trade school, and I'm convinced. I'm like, I'm going to go to an art school. I'm going to get credentials for conceptual art and these mediums, and I'm going to go work for these studios, and I'm going to present my faith in a way for these companies and be involved in all this different stuff. And then the summer before my senior year was my actual trip to Haiti. And so I went there, and I remember vividly, we had guards posted at the place that we were staying. It was like almost like a motel, the format of it. But it was run for people to stay at who were partnered with the organization we were with. Shameless plug for them, Luke 101. Anybody go look them up. They're phenomenal. They do really good work. But they had posted guards there, and that weekend before, I think, they had drained the pool because it was getting gross. And so it's me, a elementary school teacher from Nebraska, 2 career missionaries. There's a kid from Oklahoma who's finishing high school at the bottom of the drained pool just hanging out. And then there's a couple of people walking around who are all with us, right? Everybody who I just described is with us. And I'm sitting there and I'm doodling in a book, and I just kind of look up and I have that like God hits you over the head with a brick moment of like, this is what you should be doing, right? Like art is great, art is good, finish out your trade school. This is what you should be doing, right? That level of care and earnest work and service. Service was the big one for me of like, I could serve people forever. I could do this forever. And, you know, that hit a chord with me in a way that I hadn't had before. And especially because at that point I'm 17 and I'm genuinely trying to find ways to be more committed, and I'm trying to figure out what's this going to look like after high school because I want to go do this game stuff, but now there's this. And so I go, okay, I'll finish out trade school and high school. I did. And then from there, I want to get a degree in ministries, right? Which anybody who works at a college goes, you're not going to really do much with that, but hey, if that's what you want to go for.
Yeah.
And so I start looking around. I find Arizona Christian University, and they have a ministry degree. I'm like, yeah, awesome, sign me up. Like, I don't care. Right? I apply 2 weeks late, past deadline, because that's how far behind I am at that point. And they email me back a month later, say, hey, we love your records. Here's a scholarship if you come to us.
Whoa. Hey, there you go.
And again, one of those like providential things in hindsight of like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have ended up there had they not offered to pay for half of it.
Wow.
So I go. That next fall I start working through stuff, and the rest is history.
When that type of thing happens, do you have that like that sense? And I'm not saying that this is what it is, because I think it's very difficult to say that. But the sense that like God is communicating, yes, you're on the right direction here.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I did. I wish I had like a vividly explicit version of that of every time like there's a light bulb in my head.
Yeah. The whole grand vision every time is what we want, but
yeah. And short answer, no. Right? I think getting through that, I get a lot of ideas in my head about what I want to do and what I feel like I should do. But in terms of how that actually plays out, I usually have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And so
that's awesome.
Well, yeah, it's just honest, right? Getting moments like that where, oh, there's a text from a guy I haven't talked to in a year and a half, and he's been praying for me? Weird. Or, I end up in Haiti at the right time of season to not have to deal with natural disasters, but still help people who are dealing with natural disasters. And so it's weirdly serene, and I'm with these people who make a living. Yeah, that's a little weird. And then graduating and applying late, and they still accept, yeah, that's a little weird. And, like, those are the things that, in hindsight, you go, oh, 100%, that would have been God giving me the green light. But in that moment,
I'm
oblivious.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very true. I think that feeling, hindsight, God giving us that experience, I think that is one of the like ways that He, it's a gift, and it's one of the things that He does through the Spirit to like communicate to us today. Is like, here you go, look back, see it. That's awesome. Do you are you still kind of on a missions track, or are you? You said you did a lot with the college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't do a lot of international work anymore. I still support Luca 101 the best I can, just because of, I met Wendy Zingler is the head of that organization. I still email her every so often. I still talk to a couple of the contacts in country, and I'll get postcards from them. But in terms of like international work and going places, no, I haven't done a lot of that since. I wish I did. But a lot of what my missional stuff has been oriented towards, and even my degree, right? So I graduate ACU with Mike and Elijah, or no, sorry, I'm a semester after them. Graduate a semester after them. And I immediately enroll in Biola, and they've got an M.Div program. And so I sign up for them, and one of the emphases that you can do, because I love studying people, is Intercultural Studies and Missiology. So I would love to learn more about these things. Yes, please. And so I signed up for that, and even in studying that stuff and working with ACU and working with people in Phoenix, because Phoenix is obviously in a border state, and there's plenty of mixed diversities and cultures here. The land is formerly Native American, that was owned by Mexico, that got bought by America, and so all those different things play into it. And there's just studying that, right, was so interesting to me, and being able to take all of that knowledge and then put that into college-oriented ministries is where most of my missions ended up. Right?
Wow.
Less in going places and doing things, more in keeping up with people who are there the best I can, and then going to kids and being like, people are different. Like, people are crazy and interesting and weird, and they're worth getting to know and study. And if you do all those things and you go and you want to be a part of this global church, you got to get used to it. And it's crazy the things that you'll find and see and do, and the people you'll meet, and that always kind of I've met and seen a couple of kids who hear that and it inspires them to go do stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's all I need, right? That's the level
Right.
of mission that I need right now. In the future, I don't know. My wife and I joke all the time we'll end up in some random country at some point because God has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And we'll get comfortable and we'll be like, yeah, this is great. And then God's going to go, you're going to go to Paraguay now. And we're okay,
Yeah.
I guess we're going to Paraguay now.
Yeah. Couple things.
Yeah.
How long have you been married?
We've been together for 4.25 years. We've been married for almost 2 of that.
Okay, awesome. That's super cool. How did you meet your wife?
First day of class, actually, at ACU.
Yes.
And
Oh, Bible school. Let's
Bible
go.
schools, absolutely. We had 2 classes. We had Intro to Bible together, and then we had Psych of Religion together, which was weird because she was an education major, so she shouldn't have been in that class, but she was. And double weird because it was a senior level class, so neither of us should have been in that class, but we both were. And no, we met in a Bible 100, and we both laugh about it now because she had come out of high school, out of a relationship that wasn't good, right? Not abusive, but not good. And she was like, I don't think I want to date anybody. I don't think I'm interested in anybody. And I was coming out of my history with all the mental health stuff, and I hadn't seriously dated long term since before then, and my relationships before then were not great because I was in a bad space. And so I was going into college, and I was a couple of weeks of like, I'm gonna go take vows of celibacy. Like, maybe I should just be alone. Like, maybe this is front and center. The direct seat in front of me is my wife to be in Bible 100, and then we get into Psych of Religion, which is later that afternoon, and she's front and center seat in front of me. And so literally over our freshman year, the first 2 semesters, we just end up talking. And as she loves to point out, she had to give me her number because I wouldn't ask for it. And all these different plays of, we're talking on Instagram, we're talking on Facebook Messenger. Do you just want my phone number? Yeah, no, that'd be good. And in my head, I'm like, yes. But no, we met then, and she double majored because she's crazy smart and did theology and education.
Wow.
I went with interdisciplinary for ministries and behavioral health, and we graduated ACU, got married, and yeah.
Rest is history.
Rest is history.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Super cool. Bible schools are hooking them up.
No ring by spring, but yes.
Yeah. Hey, it didn't say which spring.
There you go.
That's
Good point.
the loophole. I went to Corbin, so like Corbin touts, oh, we've got a 4-to-1 girl to guy ratio, and I'm like, you're literally sticking it on the postcard that this is what you're trying to do, and it works, because that is where I met my wife. So
hey, there's nothing wrong with it.
Hey, it works.
That's all it is.
Yeah. That's super cool. Do you like? Obviously, after all this, do you moving into like I would say like real adulthood now because it's rubber's hitting the road.
Yeah.
Do you still find like moments where that mental health stuff spikes?
Yeah, I mean, of course, right? Sorry, and I feel like I answered that really quickly, but it's true.
No, it's one of those where like I kind of know what you're gonna say, but I think it stands for it to be said.
Yeah. There's a reality of a couple of different things, especially in my case of like I have done couples counseling with my wife, but I've never gotten personal counseling. Right? Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of recommendations to people for therapy and counseling, but I've never done individual therapy and counseling, right? And that's not because I don't think it works. That's because I feel like I have a good enough handle that I don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? And then there are days when, prime example, transitioning out of the holidays with all the seasonal stuff, right? That's hard for pretty much everybody. And every year I get to a point where like there's a couple of days in there I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Yeah. I don't want to be anywhere. I don't want to have to deal with anything. I don't want to do. I don't want to see. I don't want to. Just get me out of. Put me in void. Put me in void for a couple of days because this is all crazy. And there's a point in there where I do genuinely feel it and want that. And then there's a point almost always immediately after of like, that's crazy. I need to come out of that. I need to be honest, right? I go to my wife, I go to my friends who I trust, and I tell them like, hey, I'm in my slump right now. Can we?
Yeah.
It's 3 a.m. Can we go to Waffle House? Right? It's it's noon on a Saturday. Do you want to go get lunch? Right? And being able to go to people who I trust with that kind of stuff is what keeps me grounded in those moments, and it lets me come out of that other side. And that's not, I feel like there's two big responses to that in the church of like either A, oh, you just don't believe hard enough, or B, oh, well, it's great that you have those people. You should talk to them about absolutely everything with zero hesitancy. Like, okay, well, hold on, pump the brakes on both of those, right?
Yeah.
There's this mentality of like, oh, you just don't believe hard enough. It's like, well, my brain chemistry is messed up, right? Like, this isn't a behavioral attribute that I've developed because I have, a pattern of things that I do. It's literally just there's a point where my brain just goes, no, we're going to stop doing stuff. And now I'm here. And because I'm not medicated, I have to deal with it a different way, right? Because maybe it's bad enough that people do get medicated. It's like, that's a good thing. That's modern medicine. That's a God-given thing, right? And on the other side of like, we should be absolutely honest with them about absolutely everything with zero hesitance. I'm like, there are parts of my life I don't need everybody to know.
Yeah, tell them go first. You guys go first.
Exactly. Like, intimate and honest with the things that matter, absolutely. But I want to bear their burdens as much as they bear mine.
Yeah.
And they deserve a right to privacy as much as I do, right? So having healthy boundaries and then having people to go to are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to hear, having those people like that, and whether or not they're believers, because I fully acknowledge that we can have, I've heard it called like the unholy huddle, where you've got the friends that are like they don't believe in Jesus, but they're your friends.
Yeah, it's important.
And but whether or not they are, like, seeing God even use saved and unsaved people to help minister to you in those moments, and then like as an extension, you're going out and ministering to these young people who are figuring out their course in life, and just you able to kind of share real boots on the ground, like, no, hey kid, like I've been there, I am there, and that's awesome. I think we need more of exactly what you just said, like sharing the parts that are important, and telling the truth about it. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, even now, right? There's a couple of guys who I still I'm in contact with from around. Just we met at ACU and they went back home, and I went back home, which is 10 miles away. But like, it's we'll get on the phone and they're like, I'm dealing with this, and this, and it's like, even the fact that if they're in California, I'm 600 miles away. If they're on the other end of the country, I'm 1,700 miles away. But even being able to call up and be like, hey, I don't know what to do, right? This is where I'm at. This just sucks. And being able to sit there and be with you in that moment of like, no, that does suck, and I'm sorry, right? Let's pray together. Can I do anything? Do you have people? Can I help you get people? Like, do you need to come visit? What do you need, right? And at the same time, them knowing that at any moment, if it's just they need to be alone, or if it's just they're done talking about it, that they can say so, right? And they can hang up, or they can just say, hey, let's change the topic, and being okay with that, right?
Yeah.
I wish that was something that people got taught more.
Yeah. Well, and you were describing that, and all I can think of is Job and his friends.
Yes.
Job hits it, and then his friends are like, yeah, but you're obviously a terrible sinner, and and God's probably really angry at you for something that you forgot about, and so maybe you need to.
You're at fault. You're terrible.
Yeah, we can learn a lot of lessons through negative examples in the Bible.
All the time.
Yeah. So is there like a lesson or two that, and there's some through lines that I've heard. So, I mean, we can tweet, but like, have you identified, like, here's like some things that Jesus has taught me through this Christian walk?
Just in relation to anything?
I mean, just to mental health or ministry, or just, basic Christian living and practice, anything that is like has been like big standout.
Yeah, I mean, there's I always joke that James is my favorite book, and I say it's a joke
Yeah.
because I am a believer that you shouldn't have a favorite book, but everybody does, right?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
James is my go-to for a lot of different reasons. I love its practicality. I love its honesty, right? I love that there's a bit of a tension that doesn't contradict Paul, but at the same time recognizes the realism of what Paul's implications are, right? All those things connecting. I mean, if people have listened to the James series, they know of just there's a level of when you're in faith and you're walking in faith, you're gonna have to deal with stuff, period, right? And that's a lot messier and a lot grayer than people want it to be. And it
Yeah.
takes discernment and community and being earnest with the Spirit about this is a lot and I don't know what to do, right? And I think that's probably my biggest lesson in
Yeah.
in James specifically, but in general, of like there are times when I don't know what to do, and that's okay, right? Because I don't have to all the time,
Yeah.
thank God.
Yeah.
And B, that's normal, right? Like you don't walk into every scenario of every day of every moment of your life and go, yeah, no, this is exactly what I need to do right now. It just doesn't happen, right? And there are people who have that expectation. It baffles me of like that's a thing, that's a thing that happens in your brain of you think you need to know everything that's going on
Yeah.
all the time. And it's not to bash those people. It's literally just like that must be exhausting. That must be
Yeah.
so draining all the time. And then that's where the mental health stuff dips in. But that's its own
Yeah.
thing. I'd say immediately under that is in walking your own faith. And I think it was the first episode I did with Pickled of like you you don't do it alone. You can't be alone, right?
Yeah.
It's outside of all the psychology that we could dip into, sociology we could dip into, civilization stuff that we could dip into of like what happens when people are alone, right? There is a overtly Christian biblical example of you are better with other people,
Yeah.
right? As in like you grow, you develop, you mature, you become somebody who is not just better because you're faithful, but is better because you feel better, you're healthier, you're encouraged and designed to be with those people because they help you. That's how that works. Um, and I could go to Ephesians or Galatians or First Corinthians or really
Yeah.
any of the epistles at this point of just there's an
Yeah.
example there, and I think it's beautiful that Jesus set that standard really early on.
Yeah. I think hearing that idea that there is that tangible, I don't want to say experiential because sometimes that puts it up here, but that you feel the effects of Christian fellowship, Christian serving one another, bearing each other's burden, like you'd said. And I think sometimes people who might look in from the outside of Christianity, I think they get stuck sometimes of like, well, why would you choose this? You got to get up early on a weekend, and you got to go. You got to talk to these people that. And it's like, yeah, there's that component. I'm gonna acknowledge it. I work for a church, and I'll be the first to admit there's Sunday mornings where it's like I just don't want to talk to some people.
Put me in a box.
And
I just
yeah, but then for every one of those, there is a moment where it's like, I needed this lady to walk up and just be kind this morning, or like just see a little kid do something goofy in the hallway. And there's some tangible stuff that God does in our spirit when Christians are gathered and or even just living amongst each other.
yeah.
That's super cool.
No, I talk about negative examples, right?
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite things about the internet is being able to have all the open commentary. And there are definitely people who are a little too comfortable on the internet, but in terms of like people sharing experiences,
Yeah.
it's crazy to me to see how many people come forward with like church hurt or with, they're not even Christian, but they've experienced bad things of there were Christians at a protest or there were Christians at
Yeah.
a public event or whatever. Right? And then immediately seeing, in responses, and I wish they were the majority, but it's sad that they're often not, of just people being like, no, that's valid. Right? No, that that shouldn't have happened, right? They messed up in that case. You're not the one, and it might be, there's definitely a lot of cases of where like, okay, well, is that church hurt, or you being held accountable? Is that church hurt, or you didn't want to be disciplined, right? And there are cases of that, but there are so many more of like, no, that was a crappy experience, again, for lack of a better word. Like, that was a bad experience. You shouldn't have had to have that experience. But if you want to come to my church, if you want to come hang out with me, and watching people try and rebuild that connection is so cool too.
Yeah. I shared with Jesse that, like, we got a new pastor here at the church that I work at, and one of the things that he said to me when he started was, he's like, listen, we're going through a time where there is some hurt, and that hurt has not had a space. And so part of what we need to do in yours and I's ministry as like a pastoral team is just to give people a place to be hurt.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to get them to serve right away. We're just letting them be here and letting them heal. Yeah. And it was refreshing because, and it's one of those things where it's like, it's tough. Because it's a lot of you being honest with a lot of your own church hurt, and it's like, it exists, but it'll be okay, and God will use it. Yeah. And you shared that James has been like, it's your favorite, and you are right. Everybody has a favorite. I'm convinced everybody ought to have a favorite. I'm also convinced that Christians ought to have a book where they're like, I don't know. I will read it. Yeah. I'm just like, it's the one where every year with your Bible reading plan, you're like, I think I'm going to swap over to audiobook for this one, because I put it on maybe 2 times speed.
People, it's Leviticus. Moving on.
Oh yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment. I like Leviticus.
God bless you, dude.
Yeah, I love it. I actually just texted Jesse probably an hour or so ago, right before we got on, because I was here at the church doing some prep. Yeah. I'm like, hey Jesse, I'm gonna pitch you an idea. Sermon prep for a deep dive on a 30-something part series of Ezekiel. He just sent me why? And I said, well, because that's where we're at, Jesse. That just jump right in.
And so, next, come on.
Yeah, no, like for me, I get to, I think books like this is gonna ruffle. The Gospel of Mark is like, it's a challenge for me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's the gospel. Yeah. It's just so quick. It's like bam, 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 and I'm like, no. I want you to like detail some of this out.
Give me more.
And give me more. And also the parts that you've given me, there's like others that already have more, and so I really, it's worth reading. But the Gospel of Mark is one where I struggle with it, if I'm telling the truth.
I'm gonna say you and my wife would get along. She's an Old Testament nerd.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the Old Testament.
Right. Yeah. Book of James.
Yeah. But is there other scripture or like a specific verse or anything that's, people like, oh, my life verse? I don't know if I want to ask that question, but is there a passage, or is there something that stands out? It could even be just a concept in the Bible that has been a constant to you in your faith.
Yeah. Can I take that piece by piece?
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of like a theme, sacrificial love, right? I think that's, for lack of a better word, it gets not downplayed but understated. Of like, God loves Absolutely. You, God loves you, God gave his only son for you. Like, yeah, but I don't think we sit with what that actually means. Of like, hey, we broke a eternal being, and he gave that to us. Like, that happened. That's a thing that he did on our behalf, right? And to sit with that and be with it. In tandem to that, I have 2 verses that I always, 3 verses, but I'll skip James. 2 verses outside of James that I always think of. Is John 15:12, which is the greater love has none other than this, than to give one's life for one's brother, right? That whole section of Jesus talking to the disciples about what it actually means to be not just compassionate, but genuinely loving to somebody. Of like, hey, if you love somebody, the greatest form of that is you would die for them, right? And we get the action movie of that of like, I'll take a bullet for you. It's like, no. Like, I will go on your behalf. Of like, I would willingly take your place if it meant that you could continue on, right? I think that's incredible. And the living part of that is what I call it. Of like the flip side of that coin to dying is Galatians 6:2 of bear one another's burdens in Christ. Right? Of like when you're together, and obviously Galatians talks about a whole heap of things of what it means to be in Christian community, but Paul gets to the end of the letter and he literally just goes, bear one another's burdens in Christ. Like just summarizes it in one verse of like you have stuff going on, right? Stop leaving people. Go be with them. Bear it with them. All right, and then yes, that does play into James and James 1, but they can go. I'll leave that one for now of what it means to deal with trials.
Yeah. I feel like I don't remember what part of James you taught, but I definitely feel like you have fleshed that out at some point on this podcast. So yeah, that's awesome. You kind of shared this a little bit, where you feel called to like this kind of ministry and this mission here. Have you and your wife or you just, have you thought about like where God is taking you? I know you said that you might one day go on a, an international mission of some sort. Yeah. But, like, do you have a sense for that, or is it kind of just like you're in where you are now?
Yeah. I mean, the international thing is just kind of an inside joke between us because my wife is a heavy, like week to week planner. Like she likes to have an idea of what's going on week to week. And so,
God bless her.
I know, right? Of like, hey, we're going to do dinners. Hey, I shared my calendar with you, which thank God, right? Because that genuinely, you want to talk about like being improved in marriage, genuine improvement of having a calendar that I actually use. Outside of that,
guys like us need ladies like that. Yes. That's for sure.
Thank God. The longer term stuff is usually what I'm thinking about, and that's not because my wife doesn't have ambitions. It's just because I think differently, right? And then we complement each other very well in that way, and so I've had the inclination for going on probably 3 years now of I want to do solid research into what technology and the church look like together in like a proper ethically driven ecclesiology. Like that is my obsession of the last probably year and a half, and it's an idea I've had for a few years now. I would love, both for the sake of being able to swap from being an adjunct professor to a full-time professor, and for the sake of genuinely getting that research done and like published and taken care of so that people have an open resource for it. I would love to do a doctoral process for that if I can. But obviously that's a way bigger thing that you got to apply for, and it takes effort and time. And I've applied a couple of places, and I haven't been able to give it the right amount of work yet. And yeah, I think long term, that's the goal of like on my end of things. That's where I want to be. Right now, my wife is working on her MA in Old Testament studies, and she's getting, because Biola is Biola. Shout out to them. They have a fully virtual version of that, and so we get to be in Arizona with my family, and we don't have to worry about going to Texas for holidays with her family because of that, which is great. But her long-term goal is she wants to do devotionals, right? She wants to help people in that way of like guiding women spiritually through that stuff because she benefited a lot from that when she was younger. And between those two things, I think ultimately it's just going to be a pin drop of where does God put us, which is scary and cool at the same time. Because, maybe it legitimately does end up being Paraguay. Who knows? Right? But at the same time, it could be, we stay in Arizona for the next 10 years. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
You sound content either way, which I think is the key. That's cool. And I got to tell you, that idea of like technology and I'm not even gonna pretend like I'll remember exactly what you said because it was very cool. But I wrote down in my like backwoods Montana technology and church. Yes. So
that's the bigger idea. I gotta whittle it down.
That's super interesting. Like, and I think it's super important. Especially when we start to get into the world of AI, which scares me.
Well, I mean, AI aside, right? It's one of those. Yeah. It's one of those things of especially because of all the gaming stuff in my background, right? Yeah. I'm still plugged into a lot of different places. I'm still connected with a lot of different people, most of whom are not Christian because that entire industry is pretty non-Christian or secular in general.
Yeah.
But I get online and I talk with friends from around the state and around the country pretty much every day. And I get to do that because of what's in front of me, right? We get to do this because of what's in front of us, right? And both of those instances of being communal and being gospel driven in the digital space, excuse me, I've had a lot of really earnest conversations that way, right? People get to ask questions that they can't ask to anybody else because they've met me and they know me, and they don't have anybody else. It's upsetting that you don't have anybody else. I want you to go get plugged in locally and find a space for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But giving even you the chance to, hey, right here, right now, you have this question. Let me answer it. That's incredible, right? That's the analogy that I've probably overused by this point is imagine if Paul didn't write letters, right? Think about it, right? If Paul had to go to every single church to deliver those messages, right? It would have looked entirely different, but he didn't have to do that. Why? Because the technology of his time was this really well-developed road system and this really well-developed print system with ink and paper and not paper, but you get what I mean, of being able to write out this message of, hey, I hear this is going on. Here's my response. Here's the gospel and spirit-driven response. We get to do that with face cams. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And that's a good reminder that technology is not always electric.
No.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Yeah, a big portion of what I've been researching, and I'm going to try not to go too far down the rabbit hole, I promise.
Yeah.
A big portion of what I've had to research and kind of get more familiar with is it's a field called media ecology. And it's this idea that as you use a technology, you use the technology to shape what's around you, but the technology equally shapes you, right? And so the best example that I've read is from a guy named John Dyer, who's a Christian artist.
These phones, dude.
Phones are a great one, right?
Yeah.
But get practical, right? John Dyer wrote, maybe it was McLuhan might have done it first. I've got too many authors in my head. There's an example written by someone originally who I'm going to mix them up, so I'm not even going to try, of using a shovel, right? Shovel is a technology. The more you use a shovel, the more rough your hands get, the more blisters you get, and then you build calluses, and you get stronger, and you get leaner, and you get back pain probably of this thing is impacting you as you use it. And it might be that you're building castles, right? And you're using that technology in a really good way, but that technology has still changed you. Go to phones, right? Phones, we don't even need to get into the studies on phones, but that's something that people are actually starting to pay attention to, and it's one of those things that that is a driving force of why it matters for the church to not get 60 years in the past right now of we don't put your phone away, put your stuff away. We're not going to use AV tech. We're not going to have projector screens. We're not going to have a YouTube channel. We're not going to have social media. It's okay, you can make that decision, but at the same time, you are inherently limiting what you're going to be able to do, right? Because if the person comes to me in the online groups that I'm in and they ask me the question and you're not available to them, great, I've answered the question, but where do they go? And how do they find you? They can't. And so it's that kind of stuff that I think about. I'm it motivates me so much because I get so frustrated. I'm this needs to happen. People need to have a grounded understanding of, no, don't get rid of the physical. The physical is part of it. It needs to be there. But you can't just ditch the online space. That has to be there too.
Yeah, it's part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good reminder. So RJ, I have two more questions because I know we're pushing an hour, and I appreciate your time.
I'm yours.
Do you have any spiritual advice? And a lot of times I ask this, or what spiritual advice would you give, the you of 10 years ago?
Me of 10 years? Gosh, what was I? I was in the middle of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Find the person who can answer questions. Right? And that seems mostly practical, but genuinely, every time that I tell my testimony, My mentor's name is a guy named David K. Wheeler, and he had been a 6-year missionary, I believe, before he came back to the States and before I met him. And he had had a medical accident because he had a condition, and he came out of that accident and he had to relearn a bunch of stuff because of how long he had been out and how much damage he had sustained. And that was all really cool in terms of testimony. But the thing that made me meet with him every week was the reality that he had a Bible background education and he could answer my questions. And he had had enough experience with other people to understand why I was asking those questions.
Yeah.
Right? And as much as I would love to be like, oh, just go read your Bible, or like, oh, just go ask your pastor, right? The Bible is great when you know how to read it. And there are absolutely times when spiritually you get a providential verse of like, no, that is a direct answer to what I have a question about. That's incredible. And there are other times that you're like, I have no idea how to deal with this, and I don't know where to check, and I don't know what verse I'm supposed to reference. I don't know what psalm connects to this emotion, right? Like there's pieces of that when as you're developing, or even as you've reached a point of maturity, right? Pastors have communal groups for a reason of like you bring things to the table again in community, and you go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is, right? And being able to have somebody in your life who goes and looks at that and goes, no, that's fair, right? And either A goes, let's look into that together, or B is able to look at you and tell you like, no, I actually have experience with that. Here's an answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Our the mentors, like our mentors, they really do take some of those spiritual like speed bumps for us.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, okay, here's how you take it, that's good advice.
And that's if you even see there's a speed bump.
Yeah, that's good advice, and it's cool because it's advice that now you're kind of on the flip side of in this position to be a mentor to others. So it's cool to see God do that.
Weird how that works.
Yeah. That's a pattern. It seems to be a pattern. Is the more of these that we do, I'm like, okay, you can almost see it coming down the pipe. The other question that I have, and this is actually a question that Jesse added to the thing but didn't add to the thing.
Okay.
And it's how has your view of God changed over the course of your Christian walk, and if so, how has that changed?
Yes. First and foremost, like just here's the thing, right? I would not go so far as some of the early church fathers who got kicked out of the church as to say that if your view of God hasn't changed every 10 years, you're a heretic. Right? Like that's probably a bit excessive.
Hey, I might, but personally, I might be able to get on board with that idea.
Right, but in concept, right, of like if you're not growing and developing to see the different aspects and different attributes of God play out in different parts of your life, you're either A, not paying attention, which, let's be honest, that's most of us most of the time.
Yeah.
We're not paying attention, right? Or B, you're trying to willingly separate that out, right? So 100% I've seen God in different lights, right? As a kid, take 10-year-old me getting baptized, of like I saw him as this benefactor, this great benefactor, and this guy who I could come to with my problems, and he was big enough and strong enough to handle it, right? That's still true. That hasn't changed, right? That's a biblically founded idea. But coming out the other side of everything else now, it's like, oh, he's way more than that. And it's also way more frustrating than that, right? Like, I see all these really powerful attributes of you. I see all these really caring attributes of you. Why in the bleep is this happening? Why do I have to deal with this? Why is this something that's a thing, right? Why haven't you just swiped that? And 10-year-old me never would have imagined being able to be in that mindset. Right, I never would have thought of being angry at God. That's not a thing, right? And then now you're just like, you're on the other end of adulting. You're like, no, it's a thing. And that's just an example. But take that into, you can be angry with him. You can be sad with him. You can be upfront with him because yes, he's a great and good benefactor who is strong enough to take it all, but also he cares in a way that nobody else can. Right? Yeah. The whole mentality of like if you're in a Christian household. And you ever had your parent tell you, God somehow loves you infinitely more than I do, and I don't understand that. And I'm not a parent yet, so I haven't had that experience, but I'm waiting for it. of like, I think about how much I love my family and my wife, and I'm like, God loves them more somehow, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of shifts of like, yeah, it's absolutely changed how I view God. And I hope that in,
Yeah.
Another give or take 15 years, I can look back and be like, oh, I had no idea. Look at all these different things, right?
Yeah.
Not because I'm changing the
Yeah.
character of God, but just because I understand it better, right? That's a
Yeah.
given. That should be a goal. Maybe not thinking
Yeah.
I'm a heretic anymore, but that should be a goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's that's good. I think, I think of Israel and like even just that name, like the one who wrestles with God, and for him it was a very tangible thing. Like, wow. But
Your head's not out of place. Have fun.
yeah, yeah. But for us, I think a lot of the times, like, not that God is actively like pow pow, but he brings us to and brings us through and brings us up to these moments, whether it's mental health or church hurt or what have you, the things of life, and simply for the none other than that we might wrestle with him a bit more through it. And no, I think that's a really good reminder. And yeah, it's well said. We ought not to stay where we're at with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle sometimes, right, dealing with people who want. I gotta phrase this right. I struggle sometimes with people who want their relationship with God to be one thing, right? And then you kind of have to sit there of like, what are the implications of that? What does that actually mean? But it always cycles back to around of like your relationship with anybody is never just one thing, right? Like I love my wife. I will, God willing, love my wife until I die, right? And at the same time, I also know that there's all kinds of intricacies in our relationship that I account for that don't have anything to do with love, right? Or maybe have something to do with frustration, right? And that's not just like a marriage thing, right? That's a relation. That's a being human thing. And the goal is not to get rid of the frustration. The goal is to handle the frustration in a healthy way so that it doesn't damage the relationship, right? And if you can't do that with God, right? Again, you're either willingly choosing not to do that, or you're not paying attention. That's my genuine, heartfelt plea, I guess. I don't know what word to use for that.
Yeah. No, that's a great reminder, and just that reminder that it is a relationship, and God has a will and a personality, and it's not just this amorphous blob floating out there that we interact with. So that's good. RJ, thank you for sharing, and thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to hear it all and kind of get to know you better. Just me, but I'm excited for what God will do with this. It's a cool story.
The honor
I appreciate it
genuinely, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future too. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I'm gonna close this out, and then I'm gonna hit the end record, and then I have another question for you. Well, hey, listener, thank you for being here. RJ, again, thanks for sharing. As always, like we will catch you guys next time. Marta's gonna outro us. Love y'all, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Pickled Parables. If you enjoyed this message, please rate us, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you're interested in more things like this, check out our secondary podcast called My Dusty Bible. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at parable_ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. Parable is a volunteer organization, and we would deeply appreciate your prayers. Thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you later.